Over there, back over there. Yep. Oh, wait, Pamela. We got to get Pamela a hearing aid. Let's put that on the list. All right. Well, here's another opportunity for us to share some of the art, perhaps, that we've learned in the classes or that we started to do. And so, does anybody have a piece of art that they'd like to offer, or devotions? This is a devotional period. A poem. Is the South ready? Is the South ready? All right, let's try to pull this all back together. All right, friends, we're going to do some devotions. All right, let's focus, people. All right, let's focus. So we're going to start with some devotions. Who would like to offer a prayer to begin? All right, please come up.
Thanks. Sorry, I've got to use my phone.
That's all right.
Make firm our steps, O Lord, in thy path, and strengthen thou our hearts in thine obedience. Turn our faces towards the beauty of thy oneness, and gladden our bosoms with the signs of thy divine unity. Adorn our bodies with the robe of thy bounty, and remove from our eyes the veil of sinfulness, and give us the chalice of thy grace, that the essence of all beings may sing thy praise before the vision of thy grandeur. Reveal then thyself, O Lord, by thy merciful utterance and the mystery of thy divine being, that the holy ecstasy of prayer may fill our souls, a prayer that shall rise above words and letters and transcend the murmur of syllables and sounds, that all things may be merged into nothingness before the revelation of thy splendor. Lord, these are servants that have remained fast and firm in thy covenant and thy testament, that have held fast unto the cord of constancy in thy cause, and clung unto the hem of the robe of thy grandeur. Assist them, O Lord, with thy grace, confirm them with thy power, and strengthen their loins in obedience to thee. Thou art the pardoner, the gracious.
Wonderful, thank you. Also a time for poem or spoken word. I see you have something there. Who's that for, Carlos?
Well, our group took the fourth theme of educational endeavors, promoting educational endeavors, and we made a few different poems, structured poems with them.
And Vicky's going to try to.
Karibo was in there, Matt was in there. You read it.
Carlos will read it. Come on up here, Carlos.
Okay, I'll try. Okay. Children, animated, play, learn, seek, adorable, and lovable sponges. Light.
So that first line is the title, if you will. The second line is two adjectives of the above word. The third line are action words associated with that word. The fourth line is a phrase, and the fifth line is sort of like a tie back to the original word or another word for children. So
Start from the beginning.
children, energetic, animated.
Wonderful. Nice. All right, anybody else like to offer anything?
Yes.
Oh, wow. We had overachievers in that.
I tell you what, they did. Okay, hold on, folks. Go ahead.
Basically, what we did in our group was we had a couple different choices, and one group did the collages, and the other did some cakes. So I did not get a chance to really look at these because I was with the same theme group. If somebody from the collage group wants to come up at this point or something.
Devlin?
Yeah, yeah.
Do I need this? Not really.
It's up to you.
Project.
Alice, is there? You wanna come?
She's accompanying you from the distance.
Just to help you get here.
So we just got different pictures that represent things, and we've got peer support, needs to be generational, mothers are the first educators, all ages participate, learning to serve, families are key, and it's a global enterprise. Down here, we've got, this it says Rudy book. It says, this is no, so it's not lecturing, it's not teaching, it's this, everyone participating.
Yes.
Collective art enables universal participation to come about. And here is a so-called vibrant community. So you've got children saying Bible prayers. This is like a service project. This is a collective musical extravaganza, whatever you want to call it. And accompanying each other, but learning because they've got some books here and something similar. That's it. I think, for all.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It's not here, but as you can see, it's.
Well, she is here. But yeah, no, go ahead. She said she didn't want to.
She's eating.
They're doing such a good job.
Yes.
Well, this, as you can see, this is a very, very beautiful set out there. And the person who was doing it, she was so wonderful because she gathered everything first. And then in her mind, she had this overall image. And then she put it on paper. So it's really nice. At the center, of course, you've got the, I believe this is the American House of Worship.
Yes.
It is, I think. Around it, we've got lots of
Sorry about that. All right, so that's wonderful. It was excellent work. So let's lead into our second. That really is a good jumping off point to get into theme 5, engaging in social transformation. So what we're going to do is watch the next part of Exemplar, and then we'll discuss at the end. My apologies, yes. Young people, thank you very much for joining us. Oh, wait, Pamela, they're holding on to the numbers until later, correct? Yep. So after, when we pull everybody back together, so hold on to your numbers. All right. Thank you very much.
Every day, Abdu'l-Baha would greet those in need, distributing coins and clothes with compassion. Little children gathered around him to receive sweets and his infinite words of support and kindness. And in Abdu'l-Baha's household was a special gift, his grandson Shoghi. At just 5 years old, Shoghi Effendi pleaded with his grandfather to write something for him.
Oh, my Shoghi, you said write. I have written. Now is not the time for you to read and write. It is the time for jumping about and chanting, oh my God. Therefore, memorize the prayers of the Blessed Beauty and chant them that I may hear them.
The little boy obediently set himself to memorize a number of Baha'u'llah's prayers and chanted them so loudly that his parents begged him to stop. He said, Abdu'l-Baha wrote to me to chant that he may hear me. I am doing my best. Abdu'l-Baha would later entrust Shoghi Effendi to carry forward the covenant of Baha'u'llah, ensuring that the divine order for the unification of the human race and the administration of its affairs would be safeguarded. In Persia, Baha'is were still harshly persecuted, and many re-established themselves in Ashgabat in Turkmenistan, from where the faith would spread to numerous cities and towns in Central Asia and Russia. In 1902, guided by Abdu'l-Baha and fulfilling the wish of Baha'u'llah, the Baha'is in Ashgabat established the first Baha'i house of worship in the world. Abdu'l-Baha encouraged every stage of this temple's development, personally supervised by the Vakilud Dawle Afnan, a cousin of the Bab. The community established dependencies around the temple, including a school, hospital, and university. With Abdu'l-Baha's guidance, the community flourished. Parallel to this development, Abdu'l-Baha lovingly nurtured the growing Baha'i communities throughout the Caucasus, which received a constant flow of correspondence from him about their ongoing development and contribution to the life of society. Inspired by the house of worship in Ashgabat, the Baha'is of North America wrote for permission to build a temple in the West. Abdu'l-Baha asked Corinne True, a busy mother who had come to visit him, to take charge. When 3 prominent men from Chicago arrived a few days later, Abdu'l-Baha told them to work with Corinne, saying, I have given her complete instructions. Abdu'l-Baha had entrusted a woman with the community's defining enterprise. Corinne instigated the Baha'i Temple Unity, which Abdu'l-Baha insisted must include women. The formation of this committee eventually led to the establishment of the first National Spiritual Assembly of the United States and Canada. With Abdu'l-Baha's guidance, Corinne undertook the task of building the Mother Temple of the West. Stressing the importance of the equality of women and men, Abdu'l-Baha wrote,
Women will become the peers of men, and until this equality is established, true progress and attainment for the human race will not be facilitated.
Abdu'l-Baha had entered the prison city of Akka a young man of 24. He had survived horrendous hardships, the lies and rumor-mongering of his detractors, and threats to his life. In 1908, all political and religious prisoners throughout the Ottoman Empire were released. Now, after 50 years as an exile and prisoner, Abdu'l-Baha was free. with the shrine for the Bab now standing on the very spot designated years before, Abdu'l-Baha fulfilled that sacred task of interring the remains of the Bab on Mount Carmel, a major accomplishment of Abdu'l-Baha's ministry carried out at the instruction of Baha'u'llah. The marble sarcophagus was transported with great labor to the vault, and in the evening, by the light of a single lamp, he laid within it, with his own hands, the wooden casket containing the sacred remains of the Bab. Shoghi Effendi, just 13 at the time, later in his life described that scene, saying, Abdu'l-Baha cast aside his turban, removed his shoes and his cloak, bent low over the still open sarcophagus, his silver hair waving about his head, and his face transfigured and luminous, rested his forehead on the border of the wooden casket, and sobbing aloud wept with such a weeping that all those who were present wept with him. Shoghi Effendi referred to the unimaginable potencies of the Shrine of the Bab and its immense spiritual impact on the unfoldment of the World Administrative Center of the Faith of Baha'u'llah, now established on Mount Carmel. By Abdu'l-Baha's side, these many long years had been his wife, Munira Khanum. Baha'u'llah himself had blessed their union nearly 40 years earlier, when Abdu'l-Baha was still a young man in Akka.
It is impossible to put into words the delight of being with Abdu'l-Baha, with his unfailing love, his kindness, his cheerfulness, his sense of humor, his untiring consideration for everybody. He was marvelous, without equal surely on all the earth. For 50 years, my beloved and I were together. Never were we separated, save during his visits to Egypt, Europe, and America.
Advanced in age, yet still remarkably vigorous, Abdu'l-Baha quietly and without ceremony boarded a ship, undertaking a 3-year journey to announce to the world that the long-promised age for the unification of humanity had come. In his absence, Abdu'l-Baha entrusted his beloved sister, Baha'i Khanum, to hold the reins of the Baha'i faith, a role unprecedented for women in religious history. In Egypt, scholars, clerics, and newspaper reporters welcomed Abdu'l-Baha with enthusiasm and curiosity. Sheikh Ali Yusuf, the editor of the Arabic paper Al-Muwayyid, who was once harshly opposed to the Baha'is, visited Abdu'l-Baha, then described his encounter.
He is deeply versed in theology, master of the history of Islam, dedicated to the belief in the oneness of mankind. His teaching and guidance revolve around the axes of relinquishing prejudices, religious, racial, patriotic.
A young boy named Ali Yazdi remembered his first meeting with Abdu'l-Baha in Egypt.
He was as straight as an arrow. He looked at everyone, smiled, and welcomed all with Khosh Amadid, Khosh Amadid. Welcome, welcome. When Abdu'l-Baha spoke to me, I would look into his eyes, blue, smiling, and full of love.
In his life, in his deeds, in his written and spoken words, Abdu'l-Baha challenged the fundamental assumptions of society, constantly guiding humanity towards unity, so that ignorance, poverty, and violence would be banished from the earth. Abdu'l-Baha traveled to Europe, where in London's City Temple, he spoke to an overflowing congregation, his first address before an audience of more than just a fortunate few, saying,
This is a new cycle of human power. All the horizons of the world are luminous. You are loosed from ancient superstitions which have kept men ignorant, destroying the foundation of true humanity. The gift of God to this enlightened age is the knowledge of the oneness of mankind.
In Europe, Abdu'l-Baha would eventually visit Switzerland, Scotland, Germany, Hungary, and France, where he spoke to thousands about the search for truth, saying, All consider themselves respectively the only guardians of the truth, and that every other religion is composed of errors. The fact that we imagine ourselves to be right and everybody else wrong is the greatest of all obstacles in the path towards unity. And unity is necessary if we would reach truth, for truth is one. Across the Atlantic in New York City, a Christian clergyman named Howard Colby Ives was struggling with faith and purpose.
That fall and winter is a period marked in my memory as months of great unhappiness. I know of no greater disappointment than that which comes to the sincere soul who, seeking God, finds him not.
When Howard learned that Abdu'l-Baha was coming to America, he told a friend that he would like to meet him alone to discern the truth. Weeks later, Howard's wish came true.
We sat alone, knee to knee, eye to eye. He looked at me. He looked right into me. It seemed as though never before had anyone really seen me. He put his two thumbs to my eyes while he wiped the tears from my face, admonishing me not to cry. That one must always be happy. And he laughed, such a ringing, boyish laugh. We both sat perfectly silent for what seemed a long while, and gradually a great peace came to me. Then he swept me into his arms. Such a hug, my very ribs cracked. He kissed me on both cheeks, laid his arm across my shoulders, and led me to the door. That is all. But life has never been quite the same since.
During the days the two spent together, Abdu'l-Baha often spoke of Christ with this minister. Howard became a devoted Baha'i. He later wrote,
Here, 2,000 years from the dawn of Christian teaching stood one whose life and word were the very embodiment of the essence of the message of goodwill to all peoples.
In his writings and during his travels, Abdu'l-Baha tirelessly proclaimed essential spiritual truths to leaders of thought. He engaged with countless groups and individuals in the scientific, economic, and social justice communities, including the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Despite the acclaim given to him, Abdu'l-Baha always made clear that Baha'u'llah was the source of his thought and action. Early on in his travels, Abdu'l-Baha had met Louis Gregory, an African-American lawyer who had recently recognized Baha'u'llah. Abdu'l-Baha left a profound impression on him.
To one who realizes even faintly who this servant of God is and what powers he represents, Such a meeting is high above all the honors of earth.
Abdu'l-Baha introduced Lewis to another new Baha'i, an independent young British woman named Louisa Matthew. This introduction turned out to be providential. At Lewis's invitation, Abdu'l-Baha spoke before 1,600 students, faculty, and guests gathered at Howard University in Washington, D.C. The overflowing crowd that afternoon was the first of many predominantly Black audiences Abdu'l-Baha would address in America. Later, at a formal luncheon, Lewis was excluded from attending due to the color of his skin. "Where is Mr. Gregory?" Abdu'l-Baha asked. "Bring Mr. Gregory." Abdu'l-Baha had utensils, plates, and glasses pushed aside to seat Lewis beside him. Abdu'l-Baha then sat down, and as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, began to speak on justice.
We all know and admit that justice is good, but there is need of volition and action to carry out and manifest it.
In September 1912, Lewis Gregory and Louisa Matthew were wed. Abdu'l-Baha encouraged and rejoiced in their union. He wrote,
"Diversity in the human family should be the cause of love and harmony, as it is in music, where many different notes blend together in the making of a perfect chord."
When Abdu'l-Baha arrived in Chicago to dedicate the temple site, he found Corinne True heartbroken. Only the night before, her son Davis had died, one of 5 children that Corinne and her husband had lost. Before the dedication, on a bridge nearby, Abdu'l-Baha consoled her. He understood her grief. He too had lost 5 children. Abdu'l-Baha assured those assembled that the temple is already built. He conveyed that the house of worship was an instrument to unite all humankind. Abdu'l-Baha tenderly called Corinne the mother of the temple. The community diligently sacrificed and constructed this temple over 40 years. Corinne attended the opening with her daughters. She was 92. In Montreal, Abdu'l-Baha was the guest of May and Sutherland Maxwell. Here he offered many talks on a wide range of subjects. Of the arts, Abdu'l-Baha said, "In this wonderful new age, art is worship. The more thou strivest to perfect it, the closer wilt thou come to God." Sutherland, an esteemed architect and artist, would later design the superstructure of the Shrine of the Bab. Abdu'l-Baha's magnetism was irresistible to May and Sutherland's little 2-year-old daughter Mary, and he in turn adored her. Recalling a tender moment, Abdu'l-Baha wrote,
"Today I was resting, and the door opened. The little girl came in and pushed my eyelids up with her small finger and said, 'Wake up, Abdu'l-Baha.'"
Young Mary Maxwell would later marry Abdu'l-Baha's grandson, Shoghi Effendi. This marriage was a symbol of the unity of East and West. Following Abdu'l-Baha's example, she traveled widely to encourage and serve others, especially those in far-flung and remote places. As Abdu'l-Baha's train left Montreal, he saw little Jim Loft perched on his fence. Even as a child, Jim believed in equality and felt a strong pull to spirituality, but he didn't know where to look.
Jim suffered years of prejudice, hardship, and loss. And then he saw Abdu'l-Baha again, this time in a photograph. His world was transformed, his eyes were opened. He and his wife Melba became the first Indigenous Baha'is in Canada.
Having raised the warning and urged the world to work for peace, Abdu'l-Baha returned to the Holy Land in 1913, and the First World War he had predicted broke out. This violence and injustice filled Abdu'l-Baha's soul with agony. He explained that patriotic prejudice is also due to absolute ignorance, for the surface of the earth is one native land. When a wartime blockade threatened the region, the grain Abdu'l-Baha had asked the farmers of Adessia to grow and store was carried by camel to Akka and Haifa. Abdu'l-Baha's actions and foresight saved countless local people from all backgrounds from starvation. When asked, Abdu'l-Baha told reporters that peace was his purpose and his message. Writing to the Central Organization for a Durable Peace at The Hague, Abdu'l-Baha emphasized that peace would require a profound transformation in human consciousness and a commitment to spiritual truths, demonstrating that any barrier to peace can be obliterated through Baha'u'llah's teachings. Referring to a root cause of prejudice and division, Abdu'l-Baha explained, "If religion does not agree with science, it is superstition and ignorance. For God has endowed man with reason in order that he may perceive reality." During the war, Abdu'l-Baha had suffered from ill health and exhaustion and was virtually severed from all communication with the growing community. During this time, he penned a series of 14 messages to North America, the tablets of the divine plan. Although sent by simple postcards due to the requirement of wartime, these tablets called for the spiritual regeneration of the world. Abdu'l-Baha asked the young Baha'i community to arise and take action, saying,
"Oh, that I could travel to these regions, and raising the call in cities, villages, mountains, deserts, and oceans, promote the divine teachings. This, alas, I cannot do. How intensely I deplore it. Please God, ye may achieve it."
Abdu'l-Baha had met Martha Root, the colorful young journalist, during his journeys in 1912, when she had shared with him that she was ill with cancer. Laying her head on his shoulder, he encouraged her.
"Roar out the call of the divine kingdom. Thou shalt witness great results and extraordinary confirmations."
Responding to Abdu'l-Baha's call to action, Martha arose immediately. In the smallest villages and the grandest palaces, Martha approached every door with what she considered the most priceless gem the world had ever received, the message of Baha'u'llah. She would, during the remainder of her life, circle the globe 4 times. Although a few believers did immediately and heroically respond to the call of Abdu'l-Baha in the tablets of the divine plan, bringing the faith to such far-off shores as Australia, Brazil, China, and South Africa, the efforts to take the light of the teachings to every part of the globe only gradually gained momentum. Through plans later devised by Shoghi Effendi and, since its establishment, by the Universal House of Justice, Abdu'l-Baha's vision to take the cause of God to every continent, every region, every country, every people, every town and hamlet has been systematically implemented. Over the decades, it has inspired deeds of heroism and love by countless souls, young and old, beyond what sometimes seemed humanly possible. Abdu'l-Baha wrote, Baha'u'llah has drawn the circle of unity. He has made a design for the uniting of all the peoples. He says now the new age is here and creation is reborn. Humanity hath taken on new life. All things are now made new. And all this newness hath its source in the fresh outpourings of wondrous grace and favor from the Lord of the kingdom, which have renewed the world. The people, therefore, must be set completely free from their old patterns of thought, that all their attention may be focused upon these new principles, for these are the light of this time and the very spirit of this age. They are us, and we are them. Abdu'l-Baha nurtured capacities in each and all to realize our oneness. These are the fruits of his example. Abdu'l-Baha emphasized that with pure intention and selfless motives, a longing to serve humanity, and with sacrifice and wholehearted effort, people everywhere can unite to contribute to the spiritual transformation and regeneration of the world. "100 years after his passing, Abdu'l-Baha reassures humanity, saying,
Remember, whether or not I be on earth, my presence will be with you always. At all times do I speak of you and call you to mind, and with tears I implore him to rain down all these blessings upon you and gladden your hearts and make blissful your souls and grant you exceeding joy.
Thomas is coming up. Well, we begin our final push here for the conference. And we wanted to spend a few minutes together, as we have done previously, talking about this segment of the film. So anything anybody would like to share, comments, tying that into whatever you might like to. And I was going to say, to get started, the first segment earlier this morning, when they told the story that in order to get women off the ship, Abdu'l-Baha took the initiative to get a chair and himself help carry them off. And I thought that's the action of a protagonist. And I had never in these months thought about Abdu'l-Baha as a protagonist. He just was everything. But of course, he is an example of how to be a protagonist. And also, what was the occasion when he asked people to tell funny stories? There was a moment of stress, right? In the prison, and there was extreme stress. What a technique, what an emotional strategy to tell funny stories to the point where they were laughing till tears came down their eyes, because I imagine it's difficult to be stressed or fearful or overwhelmed when you're laughing. A funny thing that happened, thank you, Jim, a funny thing that happened that day. So any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, I want to tell a little more about that story. With they were laughing so hard that Baha'u'llah came in and told them to be quieter, because he was afraid the guards would come after them because of the noise. Yeah, so that's the end of the story.
Had not heard that.
So, as a Persian person, is so, like, I don't know, it brings me to tears, jaw dropping. Just wouldn't expect, and it just wouldn't. So well dressed, back then, more people.
To see that, be able to see film of him moving around is very touching.
It was also really interesting along that line to see him surrounded by, like, he went to Howard University, so traditionally a Black university, but for him to make sure that they saved the place for the one man who had become his friend, and he wouldn't have it any other way. And it's amazing that all around the world, you know, he was accepted, yet in our own country, the African Americans still weren't valued enough to sit at the table or enter the room. But he made sure.
Thank you.
Can I also say something about, you know, there are other people who were oppressed in the United States, like the Asians, Chinese and Japanese. And when he goes to the West Coast, he meets with them, you know. But the interesting thing was, that little boy they show at the beginning and end is, as far as we know, the only encounter he had with a Native American. And I want to, can I just tell you a little story to sort of highlight that? There was a Baha'i I know that her family was part of the Persian group that was allowed to serve in the Holy Land during Abdu'l-Baha's time and live there and help do whatever was needed. And this lady who was a granddaughter from that family said that one time her grandmother was quite upset because Abdu'l-Baha was always going to see the next door neighbor, who was another Baha'i, but never coming to see her. And she felt quite slighted by this. So finally, she goes to Abdu'l-Baha's sister, the greatest holy, and complains. So next thing she knows, here comes Abdu'l-Baha to her house. My sister said that. He said, "You don't tell you that I was lucky in 2012. I was at a big Baha'i conference in Colorado where they hosted the Four Corners, where we have the Native American Baha'i Institute. And there were about 30 Native Americans from the reservations in that area who were there at this thing in Colorado. And one of them got up and said that one night they had been sitting around at the Native American Institute thinking, how went right through here? Is train went here? Why didn't he come and see us? And then they concluded, maybe he decided he didn't need as much time with us. He said, you white people are really in big trouble.
That's for sure. Guilty as charged. And was that Kevin Locke's voice that we heard narrating that? Or was that no? That's not a connection. I see.
The film was made by Canadian. As we engage in this conversation on racism and how we can work to eliminate racism, I'm still always so struck that Abdul Baha in 1912, when races were separate and all this, that he was right at the forefront, just really advocating and giving the example through his own actions of the races coming together. And sexes, yeah, and the genders as well too. And just a reminder again that in this nation, America, that special charge, that the responsibility that we have of helping to bring these two races together to help to contribute to world peace. And that it's so significant how much, and again, the universal justice reminding us that the way that we can tackle this, this issue is through engagement in the framework for action, teaching the children, working with the youth, having devotionals, engage in the institute process. So this is the framework that will hasten, this solution of this major issue.
I just want to bring up the word justice, after he invites, he says, well, food truck plates down, and then he sits down next to him and he says, okay, now we're going to talk about justice.
Next to me said, I'm going to talk about justice. So he showed the example that you talked about.
Right. And it's just, it doesn't make sense. We're not, it's a beautiful way of doing that. And it's, again, the example, setting the example for all of us. And to be courageous, and bold, but be loving. And
I just wanted to say that, and we are reminded that in all of our interactions, in all of our engagements, that we should keep this in mind of helping to foster, the oneness and the unity of the races. In all of our personal, our social interactions, to make it to become such a natural part, of how we live our lives. So, at the forefront of our minds and of our hearts.
Any other last remarks?
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Being part of Baha'i at age 15, we have opportunities to read a lot of stories and read a lot of the writings in the Baha'i faith, which actually links from the history of all the holy writings. But when you read some of the stories about Baha and his travels and his connection to humanity, and I keep thinking about the visits that each person would have with Baha. And even though they had complaints and they had all this and that, and they have this and that, and they can't find a job, and there's this, and I always ask them, but are you happy? And that's one of the things that we don't even ask ourselves on a daily basis. And so every time I have a really terrible day, I'm like, but are you happy, Bonnie? And I'm like, yes, I'm happy, because I'm not connected to a tube, and I'm not waiting on an organ transplant, and you know, regardless of what we're going through, you know, we never seem to ask, and that's the first question you ask, right?
This morning I was thinking, my daughter's 24. Darling was 24. Took, literally, late for her to show. And I thought that was it's so extraordinary. It's such an inspiration. Then now I'm thinking, I'm too bad travel to America at my age. You know, I flew here in 2 hours. You know, I don't know how long to spend on this boat, and then he travels all over America, just talking all day at his age. And I think, you know, there's no excuse. There's no hanging up your boots in this faith. You gotta keep going. So it's great inspiration.
How long did you travel?
You mean how long was the boat trip?
Yeah.
I guess 5 days.
A couple of weeks, I think.
Oh, yes, it was,
Actually, he turned down the Titanic.
yes, he turned that down, yes,
He went on the more humble ship.
yes.
Well, on that note of no excuses, here comes theme 5. If you can believe it, contributing to social transformation. If you have your conference materials, we're going to need to have some volunteers to read. So we started this journey yesterday morning with Lua talking about the broad vision for humanity. And with each theme, we got more focused and more focused. This morning, we went over educational endeavors in the Training Institute. And when, as facilitators, we received an orientation for this conference, and a very interesting point was made, which is that when we participate in the Training Institute, it is giving us knowledge, we're acquiring knowledge, and we do some practices. But contributing to social transformation is how we make those practices a lifestyle, which I loved. I thought, what a brilliant observation. This is our lifestyle. So as you can see in your packets, contributing to social transformation has 3 themes, 3 bullet points under it. We're going to discuss together bullet points. Well, we're going to have an exciting presentation coming up. I'll keep you in suspense until then. What pages does this start on? Page. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, they all have the same. Okay, so would someone read for us bullet point number 1?
Soji, could you come forward, please, to this chair for a moment? Well, we just want to get it on recording.
Okay. Okay, bullet point 1, becoming protagonists of our own development and that of the communities. The revelation of Baha'u'llah is concerned with the transformation of both humanity's inner life and social environment. The contribution made by Baha'is is distinguished by its focus on building the capacity for service. It is an approach founded on faith in the ability of a population to become the protagonists of their own development. Capacity building is the watchword of these plans. They aim at enabling the protagonists of collective effort to strengthen the spiritual foundations of villages and neighborhoods, to address certain of their social and economic needs, and to contribute to the discourses prevalent in society, all while maintaining the necessary coherence in methods and approaches.
What does that mean to you?
Is that a new song?
And I'll just share,
Thank you.
Thomas read a definition of a protagonist and an antagonist this morning, and the International Teaching Center a few years ago gave a very terrific definition of a protagonist, which is, what does it mean to be a protagonist? So they said a protagonist is someone who feels empowered to take ownership for the unfoldment of the growth process in your area.
Yes.
Empowered to take ownership for the unfoldment of the growth process in your area. So any other thoughts about this passage?
I think it's hard for a lot of people to be empowered. And I think that's where the building capacity comes into play, and having courage, developing your courage aspect and making those small steps so that you don't get overwhelmed and then just go back into your shell and not be, even though you may feel that you want to give, you're discouraged by the reception that you're getting, and also being able to do as you do in consultation, to be able to say something, be rejected, and just say something or do something, and just let it be, and not take ownership of it once it leaves your family. And however that other person perceives it, then it's okay, because you're not taking it to heart. It's not anything personal. It's their personal journey when you release that. It's no longer your own personal journey. You have your own plans, but when it gets out there, it's on that other individuals or organizations to take that on.
Well, I think that's the one thing we need to teach our kids is courage. If anything else, it's courage. Teach them to go out and be able to do that, maybe certitude as well. And the realization that God is with you,
Yeah, to be able to take a hit and keep on going.
Yeah, I think accompaniment though too is really, really, really important, because you can give each other courage, and maybe one has a little more strength in a certain area than another. So I think that's very, very important. Find a partner and go for it.
Earlier, we talked about the institute process and how powerful it is. So I think that we can gain courage by our engagement in the institute process. It's helping us to develop that capacity. And so we have that instrument that we can rely upon and develop, and, just develop so that we can have that courage. And as we get encouragement, we get courage, right? We encourage and we gain greater courage.
Notice the term, the revelation of Baha'u'llah is concerned with the transformation of both humanity's inner life and social life. At no time did it says he's concerned with the change. It has to be a total transformation for it to be sustained.
One thing I've always said myself is that people don't change. They only reveal or conceal more or less of who they really are, unless they're transformed.
Yes.
By the message or, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. So I'm glad that you made that distinction, because I'm thinking that, just from the perspective of science and studying the science of nature and the development of humanity and our connection, that what a lot of humanity is feeling, and we don't know that we're feeling, is the development of that spiritual seed. So the more it grows, wherever we are now in our spiritual development or wherever we are, it's growing. And whatever we think we already have, we're going to feel like, whoa, I don't have exactly what I thought spirituality was. And as it grows, it's just like anything else. It's, plants, they exceed whatever they're already in. So increasing the capacity, it expands where we are as a society. So it's whatever structure it is now, we're outgrowing it. So another society has to be there to be able to handle that.
Great analogy.
Yes. The next bullet point, anyone.
Well, let's do this. How about as a surprise? Yes? Thank you.
At the back, what will read? No, I was going to read the next bullet.
Well, how about this? We're going to, as a surprise, instead of reading this next bullet point about social action and a quotation, let's find a real world example of it.
Ah,
So we're going to invite Jamie Manford to come up and talk about.
Hey, I saw her running back down the hallway. Come on, Jamie.
She's getting her helper.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to hear a real world example of social action. And then when Jamie's done, we'll finish the third bullet point. And then we have one more breakout opportunity and a closing program that remains. So Jamie's bringing her helpers up and she's going to actually talk with us about this school that we're in right now.
And she reminded us that it's going to be very real. So if it's expressed in a very real fashion, we shouldn't be.
Here we go. Welcome, Jamie, Manfra, and friends.
I can project. So we were very graciously invited to talk about social action as it relates to micro schools. But I figured all of you are here, so you're seeing the micro school anyway. So what I thought would be a more valuable thing to actually see is like an actual real friendship that has emerged out of how we do things with the micro school. So I'm gonna pass it off to Barb and Unaya. And I'm gonna stop there because it's all these two. So, yeah. Do you want a microphone?
Which one's Barb? Hey, Barb, let her rip.
Let her rip.
That's a good idea. So they feel more at home. Like,
Sit down, bestie. Okay. So, I guess our friendship. Yay. Okay. So I guess how to start this would. Oh, sorry. Man, this is really awkward. How I guess the best way to start it would be for me to ask you what it was like in all of the schools that you were at before you came here and found me.
Well, I don't really remember elementary, like when I was in Texas.
Middle school?
Middle school sucked.
Okay, but like.
It was awful.
So how is our school different from those schools?
A lot less people,
And,
a lot less drama,
oh my goodness.
not a lot of fights, no fights.
No fights. That
No
makes sense.
fights.
I like that, 'cause I don't want to have to hurt somebody. Let's see. So there's no bullying. You could be yourself and we could do our jokes.
No, we can't.
Yeah, we can.
No,
So
obviously not.
We're like really open about our humor.
A little too open.
Sometimes. And then sometimes it gets us into trouble, but we don't care, right?
Does it? Let us see an example.
Oh. So some like stuff went down not too long ago in our school that really like got under my skin, but okay. Do I have to have this? Oh gosh, I guess I do. Okay. Oh, I don't think I could do that. Okay, so like we even do like racial jokes. I know it's horrible, but we do it, and sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I was like, all right, you went too far. And like this one here, she got some jokes. And it apparently offended some people, something that she said that I thought was actually pretty funny. And then they took it to the next level, which was really not cool. And then what was it? You messaged me after school. Was I here? I wasn't here that day. And you messaged me after school and you were like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
This went down. And I'm done. I don't want to go there. These are some racist people. And I'm just going to stay home or I'm going to go to another school. And I was like, hold on. There are these specific people all over the world. It is all about how you handle you. So don't change. Man, I'm starting to cry. Oh. I know, right? Is it that bad? Shut up. So I told her that with all of the bad stuff that was being said, because she was being called racist against white people. And it's like, so her and I both were feeling like it's okay for white people to say these things, these jokes, but Black people can't. I mean, and so I told her that at the end of the day, that she needs to hold her head up high, and I will always back her, and Jamie will always back her, and don't stop being you. Let these other people figure it out. And if they do, great. If they don't, I'm sorry. So
Don't cry more.
I'm trying not to. Something.
Okay. It's okay.
So, right. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I have 4 girls and I adopted this one. So she's my 5th child. She's my spirit child, actually. You know, my oldest is Jamie's spirit child. So I figured if she's allowed to have one, I'm allowed to have one. So
So if you guys have to choose one word for each other,
Does it have to be appropriate?
I mean, are we appropriate? We're like the furthest thing from appropriate. We're extremely dysfunctional. But we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to figure out a word because we're not normal. We're pretty dysfunctional. I don't know. Like, I see a lot of love in Unaya. I do. She tries to be all like tough and stuff, and she ain't tough.
Excuse you.
Oh. But yeah, I don't know. Black. But like, you're not just Black. I told you that side is white, this side is Black. Come on. And I'm more Black than you are. Stop forgetting this. You need to stop forgetting this.
65,000 years ago.
I know. I have it in documentation. 65,000 years ago, there is 0.2% in there. Try and argue that one.
50%.
Whatever. I love you. I love you. Oh God. Oh Lord. Why'd you have to go there, Liz? Be nice.
Tolerant.
Oh. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that the relationship that you two have and have developed is really an example of what we are talking about. You know, this conference, we help to create a world where people from different backgrounds, different races, actually not just tolerate each other, but love each other, support each other, encourage each other, accompany each other.
I'm not trying to.
So this is obviously what you two, the example that you're showing. So thank you for that, you know, that practical example. Yeah.
Transform, like Beverly was saying, like what do you think made a difference for you apart?
She's tolerant. She doesn't get upset with some things I do, We do have boundaries though. We have to. We have like one boundary and that's it.
I mean, we have more than that, but you.
I
push
just
those
don't
boundaries.
listen. I don't listen.
Yeah, you don't listen. But that's
I don't know.
okay.
I just feel like for adults, they should be like more open. Like you. Yeah. Well, not as hyper, but you get the point. You get the point. Like Barb is like the second mom. So it's just like they have to be more accepting. Every little thing you do.
I mean, keep it real, but
Extent.
I mean, don't be like. Yeah. Be you. You're a kid. Be yourself. If you can't be yourself, then what's the point?
Do you feel like you can make mistakes?
Yeah. So you're not being correct. You can make your mistakes and grow.
Barb doesn't correct me. The only thing she told me, and I'm sorry you or something, but the only thing she told me was really here, like with the jokes and the language and all that.
Well, yeah.
But I did.
Yeah.
I actually talked to a lot of
But,
people.
You listen though. When I say stuff, you
Sometimes.
trust me and you listen, and I haven't let you down, and I'm not planning on letting you down. So as long as you know that you have someone who's got your back.
I have another question. How long did it take for you to trust me?
It was love at first sight.
No, it wasn't. False.
Good try, right?
First of all, Barb didn't come for like a whole. So no, didn't. August.
This year?
Sure.
That's why I hurt
August.
myself.
Yeah, she hurt her. It's like a month or two. It just kept growing. But this year, I feel like because we did set a boundary because she's scared of clowns.
Learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Because we have
Clowns.
She's afraid of clowns. I'm afraid of snakes. And sometimes when we have those phobias, it's not like, let's announce it to the world, because like, who does that? So we have to learn the hard way. And I learned the hard way because I like to decorate for the holidays. And I put a clown face on the toilet. I'm really sorry about that. It will never happen again. And I didn't know. And it like scared the bejesus out of her. And
Yeah.
So
I mean, overall, it's just been like this year, our bond has grown closer. And then, like, when me and Katie had a sleepover, like, Katie, the one in that one, when we had a sleepover, it was just like, I got to see how Barb is outside of school. Crazy.
I just wanted to say that back in our day, clowns were fun.
Yeah. They were creepier, though.
That's when Freddy Krueger came.
yeah. Yeah. This one was the movie one. It was really creepy. And I instantly thought of the boys when we have the one haunted house thing. And I don't know. I try to remember all of the kids and what things that they like and don't like. And then I learned that she obviously doesn't like that. So that wouldn't happen again.
Well, we want to thank them very much. We got to get back on time, but thank you very much for everything. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. That was terrific.
Yes.
17 and 20, they left their, no, hello. Hello. Oh, yes, it's, I know you were drawing, number 17 and number 20 left their numbers on the table over there.
Oh, that's.
They're gone?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, friends, so when we're thinking about this fifth theme, again, we have those 3 bullet points: becoming a protagonist, having that identity that I am a protagonist, we are protagonists. We just talked about social action. I think we had a volunteer to read the 3rd bullet point and the quotation.
Can't get to you.
In this 3rd bullet point, uses the word discourses. So we're going to hear this word discourses and find out what that is.
There's another chair over there.
Okay, thank you. All right. Social action. Did I- Oh, not this one? Okay. Participating in discourses of society. Closely connected with the capacity of engaging in social action is the capacity to contribute to the discourses of society. At heart, this is simple, a capacity for participating in conversation about matters that affects people's lives and offering a perspective grounded in Baha'i principles and Baha'i experience. Viewing in this way, it is a skill which many Baha'is have the opportunity to practice almost daily, for instance, in their studies or occupations, and which is cultivated through involvement in institute courses. Opportunities are sought out to share the perspectives of Baha'i faith with community leaders and figures in authority. And spaces are created in which representatives of various groups and interests can be assisted to reach a common point of view through consultation. Small groups discussions explore the implication of themes in relationship to your local area. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Any reflections on the bullet point that was just read? Any ideas? Any reflections on the bullet point that was just read?
What are you children?
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear the question. You were asking in reference to what we just read.
What we just read, any ideas and reflection?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about everything that was going on prior to reading this paragraph, and also everything that we've studied with Linda do with the Ruby studies. Any opportunity that we have to extend to the community, we have been since the pandemic. Like even when we're limited with the capacity of being able to connect with humanity, Ma and I made every effort to help organizations to help others. Of course, with protection, with gloves, masks, and everything, but we did everything possible that we could to help others in the community and to represent and help others. A lot of them knew that we were behind, a lot of them didn't. But the fact that we were able to do that during the most difficult time, that paragraph just kind of reminded me of the struggles that we were having, where they were limited and there were shortage of volunteers. and I distributed it between St. Pete, Pinellas, and Pasco.
Thank you.
You know, oftentimes when we think about participating in the discourses of society or engaging in social action, we think that it's something like a big project or something huge. But this says that it says at heart, this is simply a capacity for participating in a conversation about a matter that affects people's lives and offering a perspective grounded in Baha'i principles and Baha'i experience. So we are engaging in social action whenever we contribute to a conversation regarding some matter that affects people's lives, you know, their conditions. That's engagement in social action. And then it tells us that, again, you know, the vitality and the how the institute process is so vital and how it can assist us. By engaging in the institute process, it helps to develop our capacity to engage in these conversations. So again, another usefulness of the institute process.
Sorry. And on top of what Beverly just stated, it's also about engaging does not mean debating. And to reach a common point of view through consultation. And consultation is not about debating. It's not about who's right, who's wrong, what my views are versus your views, but to bring it all to the table again and have a civil discussion and mutual respect for one another and conversing back and forth so that everybody is heard. And then consulting on the matter, discussing the matter.
Thank you. At the end of the paragraph where it says leaders and figures in authority and spaces are created in which representatives of various groups and interests can be assisted to reach a common point of view through consultation. It seems like it's saying that while everything that you all mentioned is like it's like part of like everything that's happening, the actual actions that are taking place. And then somewhere maybe the spiritual part of it, because you're having discussions that are grounded in the principles. So not necessarily like in 1840, whatever, but, and then, you know, like you said, debating about who's better, whose religion or whose political view or anything, but coming to a common point of view, which would be love of others. It's love of friends, it's bestowal, it's altruism, and that really wouldn't be a point of argument or debate by any of the leaders, regardless of any situation, life matter, if everyone could come to that common point that if I love you above myself and I am willing to bestow to you above our differences, that common point of view connects to the frequency of the Creator. So.
Did you have anything you wanted to share? Okay. All right. Wow. So we are about ready to move into our last small group discussion of the conference. We're going to be in the same groups, except the group from the south is now meeting in the next classroom. We needed a room with the door that closes, so the next classroom. So how about this, friends? If this is okay with everyone in the interest of time, it'll be about 55 minutes rather than an hour. But the closing program, let's start here at 4 o'clock. So please, let's all be protagonists and move back into this room at before 4 o'clock. And we're going to have an exciting closing program. We're going to hear from the children. There's some gifts and so forth. So it's time for our small group discussion of theme 5, and we will start promptly at 4 o'clock back in this room.